So it's a beautiful day out, and Ted and I are on a quick date. We wanted to spend some time together this morning, and it actually got me wondering what are some of the best questions to ask on the first date? When Ted and I were dating, or should I say courting, we went on a few dates, but I don't actually know if I asked you all the right questions. Obviously, we are married now, so it doesn't really matter. But what do you think some of the right questions are when you are courting or dating somebody?
Yeah, well, as Christians, that kind of narrows the field a little bit, right?
Yes,
We're
it
going to
does,
ask
it does,
certain
yeah.
questions based upon our faith. But
Yeah.
maybe you don't know that the person you're about to go out on a date with is a Christian or not.
Yeah.
Necessarily, because, maybe you're not going to profile that person right off the bat. So that would be the first question that I would ask.
Like faith,
For sure,
your
yeah.
faith.
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Exactly.
I don't know if I asked you that.
Oh, well, before we actually
before,
went on a
yeah.
date, we knew
Yeah,
because
we knew, yes.
yeah, because we met online. So
Yeah.
we did a lot of talking
Yeah.
on the phone and a lot of FaceTiming
Yeah.
before we technically had our first date.
Yeah.
So our situation was a little bit different. But
Yeah.
assuming you don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
as a believer, I would say the first thing you want to ask this person is, are you a Christian? Because that is fundamental to everything else in
Yeah.
life. And if you're not on the same page there, then you're already off to a wrong start. And people want to insist that, well, I really like this person, so this is going to work whether we have the same
No,
belief
that's
system
not.
or not.
Yeah.
Or you might think, well, I really like this person, and so maybe as we go along, I will influence this person enough, and then they'll be converted and everything will be okay. But it very, very seldom works out that way.
Yeah.
You want to start out equally yoked on the same page.
Yeah. And so what do you think is another question you can ask on a first date?
Another good question to ask on a first date.
Yes.
Well, related to the first question that we already talked about, I would say ask, what is it that you are reading in the Bible presently, right now?
That's a good one.
And yeah, I
that's a
think
very
so.
good one.
And we did ask each other those questions.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact,
Right.
we even read the Bible together based upon what we were reading and what we
Yes.
were feeling God was telling us at the time. And the reason that question is so important is because there are a lot of people that will say they're Christians and maybe honestly believe that they are, but perhaps they're not actually saved. Maybe
Yeah.
it's more of just their family is Christian,
Or
so
an
it's just,
aesthetic.
it's just something that you say, right?
Yeah.
And they may not realize that they're not truly converted, but your life will show the fruit of the reality that Christ is in you and dwells in you as your Savior, and that you actually have been born again. So if you ask a question like, what are you presently reading? If they have said, well, yes, I actually am a Christian, and their answer to this next question is, oh, well, I'm actually not reading anything right now. And then you might say, well, how long has it been since you read your Bible? And they might say, well, I've never actually been good about reading my Bible. See how all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're starting to kind of get a feel
Yes.
for
What
where
exactly
this person
their
is.
faith is.
Yeah, not in a judgmental way, but if you're going to be dating intentionally, then you want to eliminate the people that you wouldn't marry right off the bat. And so
Yeah.
this will do a fine job of it. But if this person says, oh, I'm in, John 14 and 15 right now, and the Lord is really ministering to me about how Christ is the vine and we are the branches, and I'm learning to abide in him.
Yeah.
See, now if this person gives you that answer and you're looking for a Christian, all of a sudden you're leaning forward. Okay,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I'm very interested.
So I personally think another great question is, what are your goals? What do you have planned for the future?
Yeah.
You need to be with someone that has goals. They might not be where they want to be currently in their life, but you need to be with someone that wants to go somewhere.
Right.
Because there are people that have just made a decision. I've personally met people who have made a decision that they are comfortable where they are. They don't want any more. They don't want any less. They just want their little space that they are in. And if you are someone who wants to, go to the moon and come back, then it's very important for you to be with someone who is like
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Or else they are going to restrict your life. They are going to restrict your future.
Yeah.
I wanted someone who had ambitions, who had goals. And so when Ted and I got together, that was one of the questions that I asked him. I was like, what
Yes,
are your
it
goals?
was.
What do you want to do? I don't want someone that is going to just doesn't want to leave the house and just want to stay home forever. I'm someone who loves to travel. I'm someone who is ambitious. I'm someone who just, I just want to achieve the best things life has to offer.
If that wasn't the first question my wife asked me, well, of course she wasn't my wife at the time.
Yeah, I wasn't his
But
wife.
if that wasn't the first question that Veronica asked me, it was definitely one of the first questions. I remember that for sure.
Yeah, it was important to me because I was in a place, I would say fear. I had seen people that had given up on life.
Yeah.
Young people in their 30s that didn't want anything anymore. I'm like, man, how can you just settle? Wow, I really like these. I feel like, I'm getting to know you more.
It's valuable even 4.5 years later.
4.5 years later, I can't believe it's been 4 years, by the way, you guys.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that, I don't know if I asked you this, I wish I had asked you was, what does a typical day for you look like?
Oh, that's a good one. Because, well, and that's going to give you kind of an insider's view of how this person behaves on the daily, right?
Yes.
Because you can learn a lot based upon what they do every day. In fact, that's more meaningful than what they say. Because you could ask about goals and they might come up with these lofty answers because maybe they are a dreamer.
Yeah.
But if all they are is a dreamer and they don't actually discipline themselves in the day-to-day life, they don't have habits, they're not cultivating their best selves, they're not going somewhere in action, then really the whole, well, I see myself as being the next president doesn't really hold a lot of weight. So that is a great question. Walk me through a typical day in your life. That actually makes me think of another great question, which would be to ask, describe a perfect day for you.
That's
because,
a good one too.
Because, we're often very limited in what we can do at the time, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's our intention for the rest of our lives. Say, for instance, that you might have accumulated some debt, and so you're cutting back. So maybe a typical day in your life in that season might be to not really do much. You're spending a lot of time at home, you're not eating out, you're being very conscientious about where your dollar is going. And so you're not doing a lot of entertaining things or being adventurous, and you might appear to be boring, but perhaps you're only doing something for a season. So to say a perfect day, well, now you can actually kind of like project back into that goal realm and say, this is what I would love to be doing on a daily basis if I could make my own rules, if I could set up my own schedule. If, for us, we would love to be able to be full-time employed from home. And me as a novelist and my wife as a counselor and a journalist and someone who does a lot of interview work, that's totally a possibility. And we do believe that by God's grace and blessing, it's going to soon come to pass. So great question.
I love that question so much because I feel like even when you are married, that's something that you should ask each other.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember, I think actually a few days ago, I asked you this, what would have made your day better today? How beautiful is that? Like asking your partner, what would have made your day better today? Just so you can be intentional about helping each other each day, because we tend to be selfish, okay? Life, there is so much happening in life, and life tends to be very stressful day to day. So to be intentional about adding a little bit of sweetness to your partner's life is really something that I think that they will be grateful for. I know I'll be grateful for. Like if Ted asks me, what would have made my day better today? So that the next day he tries to assist me in making sure that I attain that goal every single day. I think that even married couple should practice that. So I think another question to ask, which is very, very important, is what are you looking for in a significant other? Don't you think it's great? It's so important.
You want to make sure that you're compatible. It's like, well, for instance, let's say that you're dating someone who has already decided that they don't want kids, right? But having kids to you is one of the most important things. So you want to get right off the bat, like, are you compatible for one another? This is very much like the whole, are you a Christian type deal where you want to be equally yoked. And it's not just equal yoking in faith, although that is definitely the first and most important order of things. But you also want to see that if your personalities mesh properly, and if you both are in agreement with, finances and, again, family and even just some interests. That doesn't mean that you have to be like carbon copies of one another because, being different is part of the spice of life. And, opposites attract, they say
Yes,
too.
they
So,
do.
it doesn't always have to be the same thing, but you need to have these things out front so that you can be on the same page.
So what is another question that is very, very important on the first date for our viewers?
Okay, well, questions about your faith are the most important. So
Yes.
it may seem like, well, you keep coming back to God. Well,
Yeah.
guess what?
He's the foundation.
As Christians, yeah. I mean, we walk with him, we talk with him, and he leads us along the way, every step of the way. So
Yeah.
we should be. So I guess I would say, maybe ask something like, where is the barometer in terms of your relationship with Jesus? Would you
Yeah.
say that you're cold, lukewarm, or hot?
That's
And
a great question.
Yeah, so there again, it's really going to kind of gauge where you're at. And, the true Christian is going to be transparent about that kind of a thing. They're not going to
Yes.
feel embarrassed about
No.
it. They'll have the humility to say, hey, my ambition is to be hot. But to be honest with you, right now, I'd say I'm struggling with some lukewarmness. And that kind of an answer isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No,
I
it's
think
not.
a lot of genuine Christians are in that place, and just having the humility to understand that we're constantly striving to be like Christ is actually a really good sign.
Yeah.
And maybe it even indicates that person is actually technically more on fire than they're even saying that they
Yeah.
are, because maybe they don't want to appear as being like, oh, the super Christian. Oh, I'm on fire for God.
And it's funny
So-
that you oh my God, this question gets me emotional, you guys. I have dated someone who claimed to be a Christian, okay?
Yeah.
Who was on fire. Like he claimed to be so on fire that he was unquenchable, I should say.
Yeah.
But when I tell you, that person was a devil in disguise. He was the worst. And so that is why this question is so important to ask.
Yeah.
And when the person is honest about where they stand, the struggle is there, and I'm praying to God every single day to help me.
Yeah.
When I hear that type of answer, I'm not saying that there are people that are not hard out there. There are people that are truly hard Christians, and they are walking the walk, okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that.
And that's what we want.
That is what we
don't
want.
even want lukewarmness.
Yeah,
but-
we don't want lukewarmness. We want that hardness. But at the same time, too, we want honesty.
And I guess if I was to think about another great question to ask on a first date, I would say, ask them, what do you do to manage your stress? That's going to give you an indication, because some people don't know how to manage stress.
No, they don't. Yeah.
So then in kind of a high intensity situation, you might realize, oh, this person has anger management problems.
Yes.
And it's serious. Like, we laugh
Oh my
about it, but
goodness, these questions are
so
so
many
important.
people actually
Woo.
have anger issues.
Yes.
Even Christians can sometimes have anger issues. That's a big red flag, though. I think a Christian that's constantly battling anger and rage, that's something you want to look out for. But the point is, when they say, oh, well, I love to get alone with myself and with God and read,
Yeah.
or I love to get alone and just listen to the music that I love, or I really enjoy taking walks, or, whatever it is. This is going to give you not only an indication into the fact that they do manage their emotions and their stress and their overwhelm in a healthy way,
Yeah.
and that they're intentional about it, but it'll also give you an insight into some of their favorite things, some of their interests. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, I love reading and I love listening to music, and that's why and I love walking in nature.
Yeah.
So that's why I gave those examples. And so that right there kind of gives you a sense about my likes and dislikes, which is also important when you're getting to know someone. So
Yes, that was beautiful.
anyway, anything else that you want to add to this?
Yes, another thing I will ask is, has a failed relationship ever been your fault? So let's say
yeah.
if they were in a relationship before you came along and that relationship ended, was it their fault, and
Yeah.
what caused it?
Yeah.
It is very important to know the answer to this, because it will help you determine whether they are toxic or non-toxic.
Yeah, well, that's great on
Yeah.
a lot of levels, because, you ever notice how when you're talking to somebody and they're talking about, the past relationship that they had, and
Yeah.
oh, he was such a
Yeah.
douchebag, and
Yeah.
I can't believe he did this and that, and
Mhm,
it was all his fault. You ever
Yeah,
notice how
exactly.
whoever you're talking to,
That's that.
it was always the other person's fault?
Yes.
Let's be honest, it's never just one person's fault.
Mhm.
Except in maybe very rare situations
yeah.
where you're in like serious abusive
Mhm.
environments, or maybe, but in general, it's a little of both. It
Yeah.
takes two to tango, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if this person is able to admit that, yeah, I wasn't matured back then, and
Yeah.
I really was the reason that one of my past relationships didn't work, and they are able to
Mhm.
admit that,
Mhm.
then you see growth, a willingness to be transparent and
Mhm.
open and honest
Yeah.
and kind of naked before you.
Mhm.
And then also it shows you that this person has the humility to admit when they're wrong, which
Yes.
is also very important. If you've ever been in a relationship with somebody who, no matter what happens, it's always somebody else's fault, or
Mhm.
worse, your fault,
Yeah.
and they're never wrong, boy, that's a relationship you want to avoid. But anyway, these were wonderful questions, and
Yes,
I
they
really
were.
feel like it was valuable.
Mhm.
It was valuable for us, and we hope it was
Yeah.
valuable for you.
If you have
Um,
any questions that you think people should ask on the first date, don't forget to drop it in the comment below. I promise you someone is going to benefit from it, and it's going to
Right.
really be a blessing. Yeah.
Well, we will see you next time. We look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.